Let's go to a player that hasn't played in the NHL since hoisting the Stanley Cup in 2022. Gabriel Landeskog of the Colorado Avalanche, the captain. Documentary comes out recently saying that he's like obviously, had some struggles, but the whole point of going through these struggles is to get back and play. It's not to just like get back and have a good life. The whole point was for him to come back and compete at the highest level again. He's still the captain of the Colorado Avalanche, even though his message might not be delivered in the same way because he's not in the room all the time. But for you guys, when you saw that, and then to go along with that, we get the footage of him skating and like going hard in practice. Do you have any like I guess hope that to see him on the ice during the playoffs? Because I'm gonna eliminate the regular season right now. There's no way that he's gonna be on the regular season to ramp up to where he needs to get to. He needs to be on the ice basically every single day until the playoffs. But do you guys see any scenario where he is on the playoffs?
I mean, yeah, I do, I guess. I think it's more likely to not be in like a top line or second line role. I think he would come in and help like very sparingly, especially early on, to kind of get his legs going and to get him into the new speed of the game. I feel like even just a couple years ago, it's a bit of a different game, and he will have to adjust back to that. But I'm sure he would be able to help in some regards. I'm sure they're obviously pushing to try to get him back if he feels and he gets the go ahead to do it. But yeah, definitely won't expect to see him until I don't even know. Game one of the playoffs just seems
Do,
still feels like unlikely, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
do you feel like, and maybe Alex, I'll go to you, but do you feel like this kind of just like every time we see this, like this isn't the first time that we've seen videos of Gabriel Landeskog skating in these 3 years, but like every single time it's like, oh, there's new buzz around him coming back, and then it just leads to nothing. Do you guys actually think this is something, or do you think like this is just like hold the or pump the brakes until we actually see some real evidence of him, you know, doing practice multiple days a week instead of just once every week?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I do think this time around, just based on the actual footage, and I know it was only like 20 seconds long, and then there was another one of him basically standing by the net, signaling that he had stayed for the entire practice. He didn't necessarily practice every drill, but he stayed on late to do some extra drills. I think it's the first time he stayed on for the full practice in like years. So he looked quick. He looked like his edges were pretty tight. Now, again, it was like a 20-second clip, and I'm sure his stamina is not up to speed. But I have a little bit more hope that Landeskog will be back sooner rather than later because it has been this roller coaster. There was a Spit and Chicklets interview with Gabe Landeskog, and it was really interesting to listen to. A lot of the time, Spit and Chicklets, they can have their moments of being a little bit like the funny is the aspect of their pod. But in this one, they obviously got serious talking to him. And it was just interesting to hear his perspective. He's had like some really bad days, like understandably. It's been like
Yeah.
3 years, which is insane
It'll be
to
yeah,
think of,
three
right?
three calendar years since in June if he doesn't
Yeah,
play.
if he doesn't
Yeah.
play. So I actually was originally thinking first game of the playoffs, but Brandon, it is fair. Like it's a quick game, jumping right into the playoffs. Game one against Dallas, if that ends up coming to fruition, would be a lot
Yeah.
to take on. But I do see him returning this season at some point. I have like a lot of faith after watching that practice footage.
And I think one thing is important. You guys keep on mentioning the pace of the game.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no better team to probably join and practice with to get up to game speed than the Colorado Avalanche, considering how fast they play the game. And looking at this, even when he was there, the Colorado Avalanche still played the game at a really, really high speed. Like they were one of the fastest teams when he was back playing. So I know you guys are talking about like it's going to take a little bit to get up to game speed, and I totally agree with that. Even after he plays a game or two, but there's probably no better team to be practicing and trying to get your legs under you than the Avalanche, considering how fast they are and how fast they play. Like you watched like a lot of their games this season. Can you speak to that? Like just how fast they play the game?
No, they definitely are. I think probably the fastest team in terms of the style that they try to run. They really try to expose teams on the rush and they try to get in deep as fast as they can to make sure that they're able to create space, back up the defense, and then eventually that allows them to kind of work in the zone a little bit more. But I mean, that's the one thing about Landeskog is I think he will eventually be able to get up to speed if they determine he's healthy. It's just when he takes that first bump at that speed and he goes down, what does that look like? And is that
Yeah.
gonna cost him the rest of his career? I hope he is able to get back out there. I just until I see it happen and until I see him do it, to where he A looks comfortable and then B is able to sustain playing in the game that hockey obviously is. Then it will determine kind of how we go. But you're 100% right. Colorado is well equipped to handle today's game and especially even in the playoffs, with or without him. So if they have
Oh
him and
yeah.
he's able to play, it's going to be just another addition to what they've already got going on, right?
I
Yeah,
feel like a
they
lot of people might have Colorado as the Cup favorites right now, with even without him in the lineup.
I would say early on in the year, after they've revamped their whole team, their trade deadline, the only thing stopping them is that they're playing Dallas, where Mikko Rantanen's now sitting.
Yeah.
I know they've made some changes, and if Heiskanen can get back in the lineup, what doesn't now look like he's going to be active for
Yeah, he might
game
even miss
the whole
uh
round,
yeah, he might
right?
miss the complete first round of the playoffs. So,
That's tough because obviously they have a decent blue line. Like Essa Lindell could probably step in and play some extra minutes defensively, but no one has the same skill set as Heiskanen. In that whole series outside of Kale McCarr, Devontae's might live up. But that being said, getting off topic, I think the whole idea is because of where his injury was. Like if it was upper body, your legs can handle some of the pace of the game and
yeah.
how quick the game goes, but it was lower body. It was cartilage transplant surgery on his knee. And like the knee is obviously anything in hockey. If you're going to play through it, you're going to play through it. And footage of the doc suggested like he tried to play through it for the first half of the season after he came back in 2023, but like it clearly didn't work. So yeah, you just kind of hope that for his sake, if he does come back, it's at the right time and it doesn't ruin his like even post career. Cause great, you maybe win the finals, but then can he like bend over? He's only 32, I think. So,
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah,
think about
and
it
he's
long
like,
term.
if you watch the Amazon series last year, like he talked
Yeah.
about it like being like it's hard on him and his kids, like he's trying to be a great father. It's just like it's been hard. Um But I do think it's interesting that he's making like the last 2 years there was buzz, but there wasn't like this kind of push. This year it kind of feels like they are going all in again, and that's the motivation to go out and try and play. Maybe he won't play another regular season game ever in his
Mm-hmm.
career again, and maybe he just plays this last playoff ride out. But I do think that this cup being dangled in front of him possibly is leading to the motivation behind trying to get back in this playoff run. But anyway, talking about playoff runs,
I have one more thought though. I have one more thought on
yeah,
Gabe.
yeah, yeah,
I have
go
one more
ahead.
thought on Gabe. Just because I did a bit of research on like it's been 3 years since he's played, right? Basically. So the
Yeah,
team and like analysts, not just us, analysts have talked about how much of a turnover Colorado's done this year. So the only forwards that have played with Gabriel Landeskog for their Stanley Cup run, like AKA the last time he played, is Nate McKinnon, Arturi Lehkonen, Valerie Nichushkin, and Logan O'Connor. And Logan O'Connor is a fourth line player. So I guess what my question would be is if Gabe plays game one, just hypothetically, who do you think he plays with in that lineup? Is he playing
he
first line with Nate? Like, who would you put him with if he's playing?
he's going first line with Nate. He has to
Yeah.
like that chemistry. Remember, like that chemistry. That was the best line in hockey when it was
Yeah.
Gabe, Miko, and McKinnon. Like that was an unstoppable line. And if you add Gabe to that line, like you still have Natushkin, you still have Ross Colton, you still have Jonathan Drouin, you still have Arturi Lehkonen, you still have Martin Necas.
Yeah.
Like it's their lineup is deep, man. They're and Charlie Coyle as well. Like they're like if you add Landeskog to that lineup, I only think it helps them. Like if you
Yeah.
want to start him on the third line, perfectly fine. But like I do think the first line is where he would fit in the best immediately if you want to see an impact.
I would just say quickly, Brandon, I'm curious your
Yeah,
thoughts
no
too.
worries.
Yeah. I would say throw him with Nate and Lehkonen just for familiarity's sake. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to throw him with like Brock Nelson and Jack Drury. I know those are
No,
both
yeah, yeah.
centermen, but like you want familiarity. You want familiarity, especially after 3 years. Like you're playing next to Nate, it's just going to be mental. It's going to help his game, I think, a little more. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a level to that where you want him to be comfortable, but at the same time, you don't think he's gonna, I mean, unless you just want to see that first shift or that first period, but there's no way in his first game that he's going to be up to a 20-minute pace. He's going to be
Yeah.
playing with the first line throughout the game. And if you're just mix and matching just to get him in with those guys, it might create a bit of a problem. I could see him playing on the power play right away. I could see
Mm,
him, them making changes to their lines to kind of give them some comfortability. But I think in the end, you would see him playing maybe with like a Drouin or Colton as well. I think
yeah.
are guys that he can play with that will still allow him to be offensive, but will also be able to carry him defensively as well if he's not able to right away step into a more impactful role.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good problem to have for Jared
Oh,
Bednar.
definitely, definitely.